This video is a compilation of all of the Obsidian for Beginners videos that I have created on my channel. It covers everything that you need to know about the core functionality of Obsidian. There are a lot of features to cover, so let's jump right into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up a web browser, and you're going to go to obsidian.md. Whatever OS you're on, you're going to download the version for that one. I'm going to click this. Once that's downloaded, you can click open. I'm on a Mac, so I just drag it into the applications folder. I am now just going to go and open up Obsidian, where we're going to see a screen that asks you to either open up an existing vault or create a new vault. Now, a vault is just a folder of files on your computer. That is one of the biggest benefits of using Obsidian. Your notes are all saved to your device. They're not stuck in some database in a cloud server somewhere where somebody else has ownership over your notes. If for some reason you don't have access to Obsidian, it crashes, Obsidian never goes away. Those notes are just plain text files on your computer, and you can access them from any app that supports plain text, which, by the way, is a lot. So for this Obsidian for Beginners course that I'm putting together, we're going to be creating a brand new vault. I'm going to hit create, and I'm going to call this Obsidian for Beginners. We're going to browse, and we're going to save this on our desktop. So we're going to create that. And here we are. We're going to make this big. We now have a brand new vault that we can work with. And I just wanted to show you, let's just move this out of the way. As you can see, this is just a folder on the desktop, and it has this like welcome note. And actually, if we open this up, we can see inside that very file, welcome. And I can even demonstrate showing. I can open this up. I'll open it up with my code editor that I use for my software development. We've got this exact note inside of a different app. We're going to close out of that. I'm going to go back, and we're just going to focus on Obsidian now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename this file because I don't need this file. We're going to rename this, and I want this this note that I'm going to be creating. I want this to be your first note as well. It is going to be a cheat sheet for the formatting syntax that Obsidian uses, which is called Markdown. We're going to call this Markdown cheat sheet. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of the existing text. Even though I am a software developer and I use Markdown quite often in that role, I sometimes forget the syntax around Markdown. So I created a Markdown cheat sheet inside of my personal vault, and it has been a big help whenever I needed to remember how to do a certain thing. I could just open this cheat sheet up, or I can just have it open all the time. We're going to start with how to make headings in your notes. So headings are pretty simple. You just do a hash symbol followed by a space, and then you've got your heading 1, which is the biggest heading size that you can have. I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to do 2 hash symbols followed by the text. And that's for your heading 2, which is a little bit smaller. And then, as you can see, every time we add another hash, we get a level smaller. It's easy to know what the heading size is based on the number of hashes that you put in front of it. So those are the different headings that we can do. The other text formatting that is often used is things like bolding your text or putting it into italics. To bold your text, you just do 2 asterisks, and then you type your text, and then you close it with asterisks. So everything that's going to be in between those 2 asterisks is going to be bolded. To do an italic, you just do 1 asterisk, and then the text in between those 2 single asterisks. So now you've got bold and italic. Another thing that you might use often in notes is bullet lists. So to do a bullet, you just do a dash and a space, and now you have a bullet. And they work just like a regular bullet list. I can have a nested item underneath just by hitting tab. And then I can hit return twice, and that gets me back out to this other level. So that's bullet lists. Maybe you want a numbered list for something. You just do the number 1, period, space, number 1. And then as you hit enter, it will give you the next numbers. Another big thing that you're probably going to be using inside of Obsidian is backlinks. Now, I'm going to go a little bit more over backlinks a little later in the video, but I just want to show how to do it here to have it included in your Markdown cheat sheet. So to create a link to another note, which is called a backlink, you just do 2 of these square brackets, and it'll come up with a menu and show you all of the notes that are in your vault, so you can search for those notes. You don't have to remember the exact title for the note. We only have one note in our vault so far, this Markdown cheat sheet. It seems kind of silly to link to itself, so we're going to just come up with a new note. We'll just call this my first note for now. Now, it's saying no match found. That note doesn't exist. We can still create a backlink to a note that doesn't exist yet, and then we can create it later. So if there's something that you're thinking about and you want to create a note about it in the future, but you still want to be working in the current note, you can create that backlink and come back to it later. Now, let's say you want to link to something outside of Obsidian. You can do that by doing a single bracket, and you can have the text for your link. And then you follow that up with some parentheses and you put in the URL to whatever it is that you're linking to. So we'll just link to my website. And then as we click on that, that'll then open up that website inside of the browser. You can highlight text by just doing 2 equal signs and then closing whatever you want highlighted with those 2 equal signs. If you want to do a strike through, you can do these kind of like, I actually don't know what they're called, these little squiggly hyphen things. You can find the key for it next to the 1 on your keyboard, and you can use that to do strike through text. Another cool thing you can do is you can create checkboxes for if maybe you're managing a task list of some sort inside of Obsidian, you can create checklists. So to do that, you just do the dash, space, and then you do the brackets with a space in between them, and then a space afterwards, and that will give you a checkbox. And when you're ready to check something off, you can just click on that checkbox. And what it does behind the scenes is it just puts a little X inside of those brackets where that space was. So that's how you can do checkboxes. You remember how we created a backlink to a note that didn't exist yet. So what we can do is we can actually click on this backlink, and that now creates that note for us that didn't exist before. As you can see, it's over on the left in the sidebar there. So now we have this note. We're going to just say, hi, I'm the first note ever in this vault, which isn't true. The Markdown cheat sheet was, but that's okay. We'll make it feel good. So now we have a note, and we have another note that's linking to it. You've probably noticed that we have this graph view over to the side. This is one of the ways that we can see the connections that we have between our notes. As you can see, Markdown cheat sheet is connected to this note, my first note. There are a couple of other ways that we can see what is connected to a note. You can click on these 3 dots on a note, and you can then say backlinks in document. That will bring up this footer at the bottom of the note, and as you can see, the Markdown cheat sheet has a link to this note. we have two different sections that are here. We have linked mentions and unlinked mentions. Linked mentions are there's a direct link. There's an actual backlink from that file to this file. So Markdown cheat sheet has this actual link in it. Unlinked mentions is when you may have the text of the title of this note in something, but you haven't explicitly created a backlink for that. So let me demonstrate how that works. I'm going to go ahead and create a new note. Another way to create a new note. So far I've just used the existing note that was there or created one with a backlink. If you want to create a brand new note that doesn't exist, doesn't have any backlinks, you can hit this new note button over in the sidebar. So we're going to click that, and we're just going to call this another note for the moment. And then I'm going to type in my first note. As you can see, I haven't created it as a backlink. It's just text. Now I'm going to go back to my first note. I'm going to click on unlinked mentions. We can now see that there is a note that is mentioning this note. An actual backlink hasn't been created yet. What's really nice is that you can hover over this and it gives you this little link button. When you click link, it is now created a link to this note from that other note. So I go back to another note, we can see it's created an actual link. So now these two notes are linked. We can see those connections being built in this graph. Graph is something that I'm going to go over also in a future module, so don't worry too much about it right now, but it is a nice kind of visual way of seeing the connections starting to build between your notes. Another way that you can see backlinks is by clicking on this panel over here on the right, or this icon that opens up this panel. As you can see, we've got no linked notes to this another note. But we can also see links that are going out from this note. You see, we've got a link out to my first note from this note. But as links accumulate, we can see them here. In fact, if I go over to my first note, we can see those same linked mentions over on this panel as we do in that backlinks in document that I set up. So that's the basics of what you need to know when it comes to backlinks. Now, how would you go about using backlinks? What is their purpose? What are they for, really? So let's do a hypothetical note here. Let's say that I am creating notes around productivity lessons from Harry Potter. So I've got this note, and I'll type in a few things. It's Dumbledore has a device called a pensieve, which allows him to store his excess thoughts. And then we could say something like Obsidian is like a pensieve in that it helps me store my excess thoughts. And I'm going to make this an italicized word to emphasize it. So we've got this note, and maybe as we're writing out this note, we think, oh, there are other things that this reminds me of. I'm going to create a note to something like productivity lessons from Star Trek. Maybe I want these things to be related because they're productivity lessons that are coming from pop culture things. So create a link to this new one. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, create this new document. I'm going to say the enterprise computer stores tons of information for the crew to utilize. I'm going to say the internet is a lot like the enterprise computer in that it gives us access to tons of information. And then maybe I want to make sure that I link back to little productivity lessons from Harry Potter. So now these two are linking to each other because they're related notes. So you can use links to relate notes to each other. What's great is that maybe there's something, maybe I'm going back here, maybe I'm working on something here and I have a cool thought about something else. Oh, let's say there's a few spells in Harry Potter that are like, oh, maybe there's some real world applications that I can think of with the spells from Harry Potter. So there's the the ridiculous one, which is the one that you use to get rid of a boggart, which is something that takes the form of your greatest fear, and then you use that spell to turn it into something humorous. Well, maybe there's a thought of like, how can you actually utilize that kind of idea in real life? I can create a note from this one that I can then go back and kind of fill those things in later. I'm gonna give this a heading of spells in real life. We can make this bullet list as well. And there's also Expecto Patronum. The spell that Expecto Patronum does is it gets rid of a creature called a Dementor, which feeds on bad memories, difficult things in a person's life. And so maybe you can utilize that in real life because the way that they counteract the Dementor is by thinking of like the happiest moment in your life. So these are different ideas that I can then link off and create separate notes for, and it'll all be tied together. And then it will also link in with this productivity lessons from Star Trek through this chain. And maybe there ends up being connections there as well. And you start to grow this kind of graph of knowledge here, and you start to have thoughts collide and different ideas mesh together. That's what's really awesome about Obsidian is that it allows those kinds of things to grow. And that's exactly what the pensieve is in Harry Potter. It was a place where Dumbledore could store his thoughts and then he could see the connections between things. Obsidian is a free app that is primarily designed for notes, but thanks to its flexibility, it can be shaped into whatever tool you need. But with great flexibility comes great complexity. It can be intimidating when you first open up that settings menu and see all the different options that you have. In this video, I'm going to explain what each of the settings do so you can be confident in setting up Obsidian just the way you want. To open up the settings in Obsidian, you go down to this little gear icon in the bottom left. The first settings you're going to see are just the general settings, version numbers, allow automatic updates, change the language, go to the help menu. Obsidian is free, but they also offer some paid services that you can create an account for down here at the bottom. The next tab we come to is the editor settings. This setting will make it so that anytime you open up a new tab, it will focus on that new tab. The default view for the new tabs is editing view. You can also make it so that it's just a reading view, so you can't edit it. I like to be able to edit right away. Default editing mode is live preview. So what this does is when you are editing a file, it will show you what that Markdown syntax will look like when it's rendered. So right now I click on this, and it shows up this little hashtag. This hashtag is what you do for a heading. So if you go back into the settings and we say we want it to be source mode, it will show that Markdown syntax all the time. Showing the editing mode in the status bar, it will show what the editing mode is, this little icon at the bottom. You can have a readable line length, so this will wrap the text. If I turn this off and then I write something really long, it'll go right to the edge of the screen. If I turn it on, it gives me a little bit extra space. The strict line break setting, really not sure what this is meant to do. I haven't noticed any difference in the reading view when I have this on or off. Properties are a way of adding metadata to your files, to your notes, and this allows you to be able to make them visible, hidden, or show the source view. Let me really quickly show you what properties look like. So if at the top of this, I do these 3 dashes, it brings up properties, and I can add different metadata to the notes. So let's say we're adding a tag of productivity to this. The settings, I can make this hidden, so now you no longer see the properties at the top. I can also make these source, so you'll see the source code for those properties. This is what it looks like just in the Markdown. Fold heading makes it so that you can collapse things underneath headings. So going back to our Markdown cheat sheet, you have these little arrows next to it, the left-hand side. You can toggle these to collapse everything underneath those headings. Fold indent does the same thing as headings, but for things like bullets. So this bullet has a nested item, so I can collapse that bullet list. Show line number will show the line number in the left-hand side, so you know what line number you're on. Indentation guides will give you a little line next to the indentation. So for instance, you can see here, this is a nested item. The indentation guide is this little line here that shows there is an indent. Right to left will change the text going from right to left. A spell check will turn on the spell checker for you. This is really useful if you tend to misspell words. You can auto pair brackets and Markdown syntax. So for instance, if I want to type a quote, I just type the first quote and it'll automatically end it. So now I have quotes here, the brackets as well here. So they'll automatically pair so that you don't have to worry about ending the brackets. Smart indent lists will automatically indent based on the previous line's indentation. So if I wanted to add another item to this nested list, I could hit enter here and it will indent the same as the line above. Indent using tabs. So tabs and spaces are technically different. And if you want to be able to have your tabs be the actual tabs instead of spaces, this is what this setting is for. So when you have this on a tab, when I tab over, it will count it as if it's just like one character. So I can jump between the beginning of that tab and the end of the tab. When you have that off, the tabs, when you tab over, will be individual spaces. So I can move through those individual spaces. And you can change the number of spaces that the indent that the tab will give you. You can have it auto convert HTML. So when you're copying something from a web page, it will automatically, when you paste it in, it'll automatically update it to Markdown. If you are a programmer and you like to program using Vim on your command line, you can have Vim commands, Vim key bindings. You can turn those on here. Moving on to files and links, you can have it confirm whether or not you want to delete a file when you're deleting it. You can have it delete those files, move them to your system trash, or an Obsidian, a specific Obsidian trash, or you can permanently delete them. When you are updating note titles, this setting will automatically update any links that you have to those notes. You can specify where you want your default location of your notes to be. You can have this just be your vault folder, or you can specify a specific folder, or you can have it as the same folder of whatever file you're currently working in. This talks about creating paths between notes when you're creating links between things. I usually like to stick with the shortest path possible, but you can also make it so that it's relative to the file. So like if you have a file in one folder and you're linking to another folder, the path will be the full path up to the top level that they're at and then over and down, or you can have it be absolute path based on the vault, so it'll start from the vault level and go down. So the shortest path when possible will pick between those options which one is the shorter path. You can change how you want your backlinks to be formatted. Use WikiLinks, it'll be the double brackets. If you turn this off, you use the same Markdown syntax you use for external links. An external link looks like this, where you have single brackets and then parentheses to where that link will take you. You can make it so that it will show any files in the file system. Even if Obsidian can't bring that file up, you can still see it within Obsidian. You can specify where you want things like images, PDFs. You can specify where you want those to be saved. Here you can exclude certain files from showing up in like your search results or your graph view. For me, I have a bunch of different templates that I use, and I don't want those to show up in my search because they're just templates. So you can go in and you can add a whole folder. So in my case, it'd be /templates, and then you can have anything within the templates folder will not show up in your search results. You can choose a different folder for your configs to go into. Appearance allows you to be able to change the look and feel of your vault. And this is nice because all of these settings, by the way, are specific to the vault that you're working in. So if you have multiple vaults, you can have different looks, different settings depending on what you're using that vault for. So here's where you can change from light to dark mode, and you can change what the accent color looks like. So if I wanted to have this be blue instead of this orange color that I've chosen, I can go in and kind of maybe like this lighter blue color. And now that accent color appears here. I'm going to go back to this orange that I had, like orange. You can do different themes for your vault. Right now I have a theme based on my favorite task management app called Things. So if I click here and manage, you can search for different themes that community members have created and made available here. You can show dark themes only if that's what you have selected. When you have light themes selected, you can make it so it'll only show light themes if that's what you're looking for. If you want a new theme, you can just click on it, install, and use. I'm going to stick to the one I've got right now. You can check for updates on your themes. So if the creator has added anything new, you can update the theme and get those new features. You can change your font for the interface and also the text. When you do a code block, you can change what the font is for that. You can change what your font size is. There's a setting that allows you to be able to quickly change the font with the zoom wheel on your mouse. These are things like being able to show the title in the file. So if I turn this off, you'll see the file name is no longer showing up as if it were like a heading in the file. Turn back that on, you'll now see it's here and I can edit it. You can turn it off in the title bar, so if you didn't want that smaller version of it there that shows you the path of where this is located, you can turn that off. You can show or hide the ribbon that is on the side. So the left-hand side, we've got that ribbon. As you can see, it just disappeared when I turned that off. You can configure what icons show in that ribbon. So each of these will take you to a different place in your vault. Different plugins will show up here. You can manage what shows up in that ribbon with this manage button here. So this will control the zoom level. I have it zoomed in pretty far so that you can see it. As you can see, you can zoom way out, make things really tiny. The window frame style, I played around with this. I have no idea what it does. It doesn't seem to change anything when I do it. So you can change the icon of the app. If you don't like the normal standard default icon, you can change it here. You can have a translucent window. This will make it so that anything behind Obsidian will show through in certain parts of the interface. This setting allows you to turn on and off hardware acceleration. If you turn it off, it could affect your performance. So I recommend just keeping it on. CSS snippets, you can actually, if you are tech savvy and you want to make some tweaks to the CSS of your Obsidian Vault, you can do that. You can add snippets. I'm not going to go into the details of that in this video, but that is an option if you know CSS and you want to make some tweaks. Hotkeys allows you to be able to set keyboard shortcuts to different things. So I always like having a shortcut for my templates. So I set this keyboard shortcut for inserting template. You can create keyboard shortcuts for just about everything, and you do that by just clicking that plus button and then the hotkey, so Command T. It'll tell you if something conflicts. I already have something with Command T, so I can't use that. Core plugins. So Obsidian is based on plugins, this idea of being able to extend your vault the way that you want to extend it. We've got core plugins and community plugins. Community plugins are plugins that people have built to extend the functionality of Obsidian, things that are not built into Obsidian already. I'll be covering community plugins in the future as I talk about the community plugins that I use. But the core plugins, you can turn them on and off here. Each of these, well, not each of these, but a lot of these will have their own settings menu. Once again, I'm not going to go into settings of specific plugins right now. I will go into those when I talk about those plugins in future videos. But you can turn things on and off in here. Things like if you don't want to use backlinks, you can turn those off. If you don't want to use bookmarks, turn them off. If you don't want to use Canvas, you get the idea. As the notes inside your Obsidian Vault continue to grow, it can start to become difficult to find those notes again. Obsidian offers several ways for you to organize your notes so those important things that you want to remember can surface at the right time. The first organization method is one that I think most of us are pretty familiar with, and that's folders. To create a new folder, you just go over to the sidebar here and this little button on the top, New Folder. Click New Folder and then give your folder a name. While being most familiar to me, folders are probably one of the harder organization methods for me to use. they create a lot of cognitive friction. For instance, if I have another folder called pop culture, I've got these notes here. These are productivity and pop culture related. So what folder do I put them in? When I have a folder structure like this, I end up spending way too much time trying to figure out where the notes should go, and I end up not creating any notes as a result because there's too much cognitive friction. I experimented with just having all of my notes at the Vault folder level. As my notes grew, however, I started to feel that stress of not being able to find anything and everything's all just in one spot. So I did create a simple folder structure to help organize things a little bit, but it makes it easy for me to know where to put things. So now I create a folder for the year. Let's get rid of this productivity one. I create a folder for the year, and then in my settings, I specify that I want my new files to go into that year folder. I also, inside of this folder, create another folder. Do that by right-clicking and hitting New Folder. I create a folder for the year for the extras, so things like images and PDFs, those attachments that I put onto my notes, they all go into the year_extras. And then in my settings, I go in, once again, to Files and Links, and I specify that I want my attachments to go into that folder. When a new year begins, so when 2025 comes around, I'll create a 2025 folder and redo these settings. I have to do it manually, however, I only have to do it once a year. Then I can go and I can take all of these, select all of these, and I can put them inside of the 2024 folder. I can collapse that down. A couple other folders that I like to have. I have specific templates, and I'll be going over how templates work in a future video. But I like to have a folder for templates, and then I can put any reusable templates that I create, I can put inside that templates folder. There are also utility files that I sometimes create that are not specific to a year. They are things that I use all the time. So I create a folder for those, and I do _utilities. The reason I add an underscore is because then it puts those folders at the top of my vault and I can find them more easily. Inside of utilities, I would put things like this Markdown cheat sheet, something that I'm using all the time and I don't want to be buried inside of a year folder. So I'll go ahead and drag that into my utilities. The next organization method is another one that's pretty familiar at this point, and that's tags. To create a tag for something, I can just go into it, I type a hash, and it comes up with a list of all the tags that I've already created. I've already created a productivity and utility tag inside this vault. I'm going to create a new one called pop culture. That's a nice thing about tags is that you can add as many of them to a file as you want. So, for instance, this fits under those categories of productivity and pop culture. So I can add both of those tags and they'll show up in both of those categories. To see all the tags that you have inside your vault, you just click on this sidebar here and you go to this tags icon. And now I can see all the tags that I've created inside of my vault and how many notes have that tag. So let's go over to this productivity lessons. Let's add a pop culture and let's add the productivity as well. So now I've got 2 notes that have pop culture, 2 notes with productivity, 1 with utility. I can click on this and it will give me a list of all of those notes that have that tag. The next organization method is backlinks. Now, I covered backlinks in the first video of this series, so if you want to learn more about backlinks, go ahead and check that video out. The next organization method after backlinks is properties. Now I've created some properties at a couple of these notes. Let's go back to this Star Trek one. Properties are these things up at the top. So this is like metadata that you can add to your notes. This is actually where I like to put my tags. I create a tag property and then I put all the tags for the file inside of that. So let me show you how you create properties. So I'm going to hit enter a couple of times and then you just add 3 dashes to the top of the file. Dash, dash, dash. This will create properties. Just like tags, it'll come up with a list of all the properties that you've used inside your vault. So I can just quickly hit tags. And then because it knows that this is tags, it gives me a list of all the tags that I have used in my vault. So I can add pop culture and productivity up here in the metadata. And then I can delete them from down here. There are different types of properties that you can create. I can hit this add property And let's say I want to keep track of when this note was created, what day. So I hit created, and then I can click on this little icon to the left, and I can say property type, and I can have it be text, list, number, checkbox, date. I'm going to date, and then I'm going to click on this calendar icon, and I can click today. So now I'm keeping track of when this note was created. If you decide you no longer want a property, you can click on that icon again, and you can hit remove, or you can cut, copy, paste it to somewhere else. Something I forgot to talk about with tags, you can actually nest tags underneath each other. So for instance, if I wanted to have multiple categories of productivity, I could say productivity / digital. Here now we can see on the sidebar that there is a digital tag nested underneath productivity. So if you wanted to have nested tags, you can do that by just putting a / in the tag. The next organization method is bookmarks. You can access that by going over to the left and clicking on this bookmark icon. See, we don't have any bookmarks yet. Let's change that. I want to create a bookmark for this Markdown cheat sheet, something that I reference a lot. So I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to go over to my bookmarks menu again, and I'm going to click the bookmark the active tab button. This gives you just a couple options. If I wanted to name it something other than the file name, I could put that title in here. I'm just going to keep it Markdown cheat sheet. And then you can create bookmark groups, and I'll show that in just a second. So we're going to hit save. And now I have a bookmark to this file. So let's go to a different file. Let's go back to another note. And I want to get back to my Markdown cheat sheet. I click on my bookmarks. I click it. I'm now there. If I have multiple bookmarks that are kind of the same category, so let's say I wanted to create a group of utilities that I use on a regular basis. So let's go back and create another bookmark. So let's just take this another note, and I'm going to create a bookmark for it. Now that I have two bookmarks, I can hit this folder icon. This will create a new group, and I'm going to call it utilities. And then I can just drag these in, just like you would notes. And now I have a group of bookmarks called utilities. So we've got all these different organization methods, and you can group your notes in different ways. But what if you still can't find what you're looking for? That's where another familiar tool to us comes in, the search. You get to the search by clicking on the magnifying glass at the top. And you see we already conducted a search by clicking on the productivity tag earlier. You can search for anything that you want inside of your vault. So let's say I want to find references to Star Trek. So I search for that, and that gives me these different results. There are different properties to the search panel. You can collapse the results. These are open by default, but if you want those to be collapsed, you can. You can have it show more context, and you can have it also explain the search terms. So this is showing anything that matches the word star and anything that matches the word trek. If I put quotes around this, then it will find the exact text Star Trek instead of just the word star or trek. Let's say I do this search often. I'm often looking for the words Star Trek. What's nice is that I can go down here and click on these little 3 dots under the 2 results. I can create a bookmark to this search. And now this will be saved as a bookmark. I hit save. I can go over to bookmark, and that search is now saved. So if you're finding you're searching for something a lot, save it as a bookmark, and then you can find all those files at a later time. So no matter how you organize your vault, there's always the search tool to be able to help you find what you're looking for. If all these different organization methods are a bit overwhelming to you and you're wondering how to get started organizing your notes, just keep these things in mind. Do you like strict structure and hierarchy? Then use folders. Do you like being able to categorize your notes in a bunch of different ways? Use tags. Do you like seeing the connections between ideas? Use backlinks. Do you want to have a sort of table of contents or an index that you can reference? Well, then use bookmarks. And just remember, at the end of the day, if you can't find what you're looking for, just use the search. My suggestion is allow the organization of your vault to grow over time. Conduct small experiments with each of these methods and see what works. Eventually, as you experiment and test these things out, the structure of your vault will emerge organically. The graph view inside of Obsidian is a visualization tool that shows you all the connections that you've made between your notes. It was something that actually attracted me to Obsidian. I loved the idea of being able to see the network of information that I had curated. However, is this tool actually useful? Or is it all just a big gimmick? To get to the graph view inside of your Obsidian vault, you just go over to the ribbon on the left-hand side and you click this little graph icon. And now I can see all the notes that have been created inside my vault and the connections between them. I don't have a lot of notes in this Obsidian for Beginners vault, so there's not a lot to see here, but you can see these lines that are going between the different notes, so you can see these connections. And maybe with this vault being so small, you can see the triangulation of notes, of ideas, and maybe you can see how things may not be related directly, but through the triangle you can kind of see Markdown cheat sheet might relate to another note in some way. However, as the notes inside of your vault grow, this diagram becomes bigger and more difficult to discern. Just to give you an idea what it could look like when you have a lot of notes, I'm going to open up my personal vault. And we can see the graph view that I've got going in my personal vault. As you can see, I've got a lot of stuff going on here. And as we zoom in, you start to see all the titles of everything start to come into focus. It's difficult to figure out what it is that I am even looking at. Now, the nice thing is there are ways that you can filter these things down. So in order to do that, you can go ahead and click on this gear icon on the right-hand side. And we've got all these different options for filtering. So right now I've got tags turned on, so you can see these different tags. There are these yellow nodes. You can see how things are being connected with those tags, so that might be a useful thing. I can turn those off, and that basically takes away one level of connections that I've got. I can also turn off attachments, so if I don't want to see the images that are attached to files, I can turn those off. I can also make it so that it'll show existing files only. I have that on right now. If I turn that off, what that will do is if there's any backlinks that I've created to notes that don't exist yet, those will show up. So I'm actually going to keep that on because that actually helps to filter things down. Also, you can turn orphans off. So if there are things that have no connection to other notes, you can turn those off, and that once again narrows things down. I can also filter things using different queries. The same queries that you can use in the search, I can use them here. So let's say I want to search for things that have productivity in them. So that helps me to narrow it down if there's a certain topic that I want to kind of narrow in on. That does make it easier to be able to start to look at these and see, oh, okay, I'm starting to see the connections between things. As you can see, I've got a group set up here. Anything with the tag sketchnote will be in this yellow color. So let's say, let's turn tags back on. So anything with the sketchnote tag is going to be colored this yellow color, and I can change the color of these groups. So let's say I wanted it to be blue instead. So now everything that is tagged with sketchnote, as you can see, they're all blue. And I can create different groups for things. So let's say I did want to group anything that had the word productivity, and I want to make these an orangey color. So now as I can see, oh, okay, so these are orange, so I can see those contain the word productivity. So there are ways to narrow things down, to group things, make it easier to see. Let's go and look at some of the other display options. I can turn arrows on, so this will show the direction of the connections. So for instance, this Friday note, it points to this analog to digital tool workflow. It points to it, but it doesn't point back. And I can see that with these little arrows. I can make the nodes bigger if I wanted to. You can change the line thickness. So if you want those lines to be really, really visible, you can turn it all the way up. If you want to see the evolution of your vault, you can click this animate button, and now it'll actually animate the creation of all the notes that you have in your vault. Here I can change kind of how the forces work as I'm dragging things around, so I can kind of drag these, and you can see that as I get smaller, the center force of gravity, I guess, gets less, and so now things are more spread out. So you can kind of play with those and it will give you a different spread of nodes by changing those values. If I want to reset everything that I've done, I just click this Restore Default Settings button up here at the top. And now everything is back to the way it was when I initially opened the graph. So is this a useful tool? I haven't really answered that question. The thing is for me, it's not really that useful. I mostly have used it to find orphan notes. If there are things that don't have connections to other notes, I want to see those because I feel like if there's nothing that that note connects to, I start to question, is it really worth keeping that note? I don't want to have notes that are just kind of floating by themselves that don't really have any use. I think a good gauge of how useful a note is if it's connecting to other ideas. Now, just because I haven't found a lot of use out of the graph doesn't mean that you won't, so I encourage you to experiment with this. Play around with the settings and the filters, see if there are ways that you can see connections between ideas that you didn't see before. And if you do come up with cool ways to be able to use the graph, please add them in the comments below. I'd love to be able to figure out a way to use this tool better myself. Obsidian Canvas brings the flexibility of mind mapping tools to your Obsidian Vault. But it is so much more than just a simple mind mapping tool. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the amazing out-of-the-box features that Canvas provides, and then we'll look at some fun ways to use this tool for mind mapping and beyond. A canvas is a special type of note inside your Obsidian Vault, so we can't create it the way that we do normal notes. We have to go over to this ribbon on the side, and we have this little button that has a bunch of boxes on it, and that's the Create New Canvas button. So go ahead and click that, and we get a brand new canvas inside of our vault. This is a infinite canvas. It allows us to be able to put as many ideas, thoughts, and notes in any configuration that we want. There are a few different types of cards that we can add to a canvas. The first is just a normal card. You just drag that up from the bottom, and this gives you a card to start with. So we're going to have a central idea inside of our canvas. These cards are local to this canvas. They are not notes within your vault. They live on this canvas only. And you can resize them and drag them around as much as you want. And what's great about these is that they, even though they are not separate notes of their own, you can use all the different markdown that you can in normal notes. So if I wanted to make this central idea larger, make it a header, I can add this hashtag and a space, and now I have an H1 header. So as I was mentioning, these cards are local to this canvas. What if you wanted to include some notes from your vault? So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here. You can hold down the command button and scroll on Mac to zoom out. I think it's Control on Windows. And then if I wanted to have a note from my vault, I drag this middle icon up, and then it gives me the option to add in any note from my vault. So let's do my first note. So this is now a link to my actual note that exists. If I go up to the title and double click on it, it actually goes to that note. I'm going to go back to the canvas. So this third type is a media card, so I'm going to drag that up. And right now I've only got one image inside of this vault, so we're going to add that. So I click on it, and then I have that image in my canvas to be able to use. So these are the three different types of cards that you're going to be using inside of a canvas. Hey guys, Future Brennan here. I completely forgot to tell you about a fourth kind of card that you can use inside of Canvas. You can embed web pages directly inside your canvas. Perhaps there's an article that you want to reference inside of your mind map. Just copy the URL, right-click anywhere in the canvas, and hit Insert Web Page. You can also just select a URL and drag and drop. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, what can you do with these cards? Right now, they're just kind of floating around on this canvas. You can grab this little dot on the side of a card, and you can drag it over to another one, and that now makes a connection between these two cards. And I can move this card around, and that connection will be maintained. So let's go ahead and grab that. Now, I want this central idea to be in the center, so let's go ahead and move these things around. I can click on this connection, delete it, click on this one, delete it. I want this central idea to be in the center. So we're going to move that into the center, and then I'm going to drag these connections over. And now this is the central idea, and it branches out into these other two cards. You can do a couple different things with these connections, so let's go ahead and click on one again. Obviously, I can delete the connections, and I can change the color of what they look like. So let's say I want this connection to be orange. I can do that. You can either use their presets, or you can choose any color from this color spectrum. You can zoom into that selection. So you can actually do this with not only connections, but with cards. So if I click on this and I click on that zoom, I can zoom in and focus on that particular item. So let's zoom back out here. Let's go back to this connection here. If you click on this arrow, you can change what the direction of this line is. So if I don't want an arrow, I click on the non-directional, and that just creates a line between them. If I go back in here, I can say unidirectional, so just going one direction, and that will be the direction from the one that you dragged it from. And then I can have a bidirectional connection that will have an arrow on both ends. I then also can click this button and add a label to this connection. We'll just say first connection as a label for now, and then that label will stay with that connector. So let's say I have a bunch of cards. Let's go ahead and throw a bunch of cards on here. So here's one, here's a card, and then we'll grab another one. We'll say here's another card, and third card. Very deep thoughts I'm thinking here right now. So I've got these notes here, and let's say that they relate to each other, and I kind of want them to stay together. You can group different cards together just by clicking outside of a card, clicking and dragging them. And then you've got a few options here. You can change the colors of them, you can delete them, zoom in on them, but then you can also create a group. So I'm going to click on this, and now these are grouped together. Card group. And so I can click this title and I can drag around, and then all of these cards come with it. And I can create connections between cards and groups, or I can use this connection to go in and connect to any of these individually inside. What's also cool about groups is you can resize them. You can basically remove things from a group by resizing this, and these are now outside of that group, and then I can resize it again and include that. Maybe I wanted this one up here to be part of the group as well, so I can take this group and drag it in, and now this is part of the group as well. Another cool thing that you can do with groups, when I click on this, you can align things inside of them. So let's say I want everything aligned in the center of those groups. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about with groups, well, first you can change the label, you can zoom in, all those things. But you can also set a background image for a group. So if I hit set background, we're going to use that same background. Now this background is on this group. I'll show you a cool way that we can use this background image feature a little later in the video. So I keep talking about how amazing this tool is, and so far all I've shown you is the basics of a mind mapping tool that pretty much any mind mapping tool can do this. So what is it that makes Obsidian so special? Well, one thing that I've already mentioned is the fact that I can connect notes from my vault, notes that I've already made. So maybe I have atomic notes, which is a concept of having a single idea inside of a note. Maybe I have a bunch of those and I want to be able to use them in here. Now, it's different than backlinking, which makes a direct link between those notes, and I can click on those links. These connections are local to this canvas, and I can arrange those notes in a different way than maybe the backlinks are giving me. And I think that's the thing that really makes this tool better than any other, is because it utilizes your existing vault of notes and knowledge, and you can use them in a bunch of different ways. Different connections that can be made in a canvas file than through the backlinks. In a lot of mind mapping tools, you have to connect different nodes. What's great about Obsidian Canvas is that you don't have to do that. I can have this free floating card out here, and I don't have to make a connection Maybe there's something that doesn't quite connect in with things. Maybe I just want to have this free floating card here. I can do that. I have that freedom and flexibility. So let's switch over to my personal vault, and I will show you how I am using Canvas beyond just mind mapping. What you're looking at here is a dashboard that I have created for my YouTube channel to be able to track the ideas that I have and how I'm moving them through my production pipeline. So I have this pipeline group up at the top, and this is showing me the status of the different videos that I have. So let's zoom in here and take a look at what these are. I've got an ideas column. These are a bunch of notes that I have created with ideas for my YouTube channel. Now, if you click on this and we click on it again, I can go in here, and what I'm using is I'm actually using a community plugin called Data View that goes and grabs all of the notes that meet certain criteria. I will not be going over the Data View plugin in this, but the Data View plugin combined with Canvas is really powerful for creating kind of these dashboard setups. Now I've got different stages that my ideas for YouTube go through. I've got things that are coming up, ones that I'm working on this month, and then I have a list of all the ones that have been published. And so I can see them move through the pipeline. I've got another few things that I've got here. I've got some ideas for some community posts that I've got. This is an actual note, so if I wanted to drill down into this one, I could click it and see just that note. I also have my template for my YouTube videos here. So if I am in this dashboard and I have an idea of something that I want to add or take away from my YouTube template, I can just do it right here because it's linked. Any changes that I make to this note will happen in the actual template file itself. So if I say, I want this to be part of my template. So I'm going to zoom, sorry, I'm a bit zoomed out. I want this to be part of my template. So I just added that here in this canvas. If I go up and I double click on this and open it up, this template now has that in it. Now I don't want that in there, so I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to go back to my canvas. As you can see, it's deleted. Another note that I've connected here, I'm keeping track of how many videos I have done. Another thing that I'm using Canvas for is I am keeping track of all of the notes, thoughts, ideas, documentation around the gamified task manager app that I am building. Here is kind of more of a free-for-all as far as notes go. I just have all these different cards here. I've got some images, things that I'm working with. I've got a bunch of links to different resources that I've got here. These research ones, a lot of these are notes that I can link, and these are just cards that have backlinks in them, just like any other note would. And they live inside of this canvas. And you can see here I have created a group for this game design doc that I actually sketched out by hand. I created a group and I put that sketch as a background on this group. And then I was creating cards that help me to kind of continue to work with this image that, is done. It's exported, it can't be changed, but then I have cards on top of it that allow me to add in additional information. So I've got this note about character customization, and so I link it to this note here on pixel art character style ideas. Here's another canvas that I have. It's kind of a mood board kind of idea. And I've got all these different pixel art characters that I'm thinking about how to design my character. So here's a bunch of examples of different characters. And then I've got some different notes that expand on these notes that I've written out. I didn't have an idea of the story yet when I first wrote this handwritten note, so I've added that in as a card here. And because it's a group, I can grab this and move it around and all the cards stay in place. Templates in Obsidian are powerful, and in this video, I'll not only be showing you how to use the template system, but also sharing some tips and tricks on how to make your use of templates as easy and efficient as possible. The first thing you need to do to use templates is you need a folder for those templates to live in. So we're going to create a templates folder. I'm going to come over here and create a new folder, and we're going to call this underscore templates. Now the reason why I put an underscore in the front of it is so that it will go up to the top of our list so that we can always find our templates folder. The next thing you'll need to do is tell Obsidian where to look for your templates, which will be in this template folder that we just created. So we're going to go down and open up the settings, and in the core plugins, we have the templates. Now, we're going to make sure that templates is turned on, so if it's not on, you'll need to go over to core plugins and go down to templates and make sure that that is turned on. And then you can go to the settings for the templates folder under core plugins. Then we can go over here and we can say, and it gives us the options of what folders to choose from. So we're going to use _templates. We are now ready to create our first template. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to right click on the templates folder and I'm going to say new note. And we're going to call this new note. So anything that we put inside of this template folder, when we insert this template into another note, it will include anything that we have in this note. So for now, we're just going to start off by adding in a header, and it's going to say new note. That's as simple as a template can be. It can just be a header that you want to add in. I'll show you how to create more interesting templates in a minute. So let's say I want to use my template inside of another note. So let's go ahead and go here and let's create a new note. Templates are awesome. Now, if I want to insert the template into this, I have a couple of options. I can go over to this Insert Template button, and it gives me a list of all the templates that are inside of our templates folder. Right now, we just have new notes. So I'll click that, and now that header that we set up inside that template is in this note. So let's go ahead and delete that, and I'll show you another way. You can open up the command palette by either going over here and opening up command palette button, or you can hit Command P, and this will bring up all the commands that are available inside of Obsidian. I'm going to say Insert Template, hit Enter, and then hit Enter again to insert the new note. The easiest way, though, is to set a hotkey for inserting the template. So we're going to go back to our settings. We're going to go over to Hotkeys, and then I'm going to search for Insert Template. Now, I already have an Insert Template hotkey assigned. If you don't, go ahead and assign one. I use Command Option T. So let's go ahead and get out of settings, and then I'm going to delete this again, and then I'm going to hit Command Option T, and that brings up the template menu, and I can insert that new note template. Believe it or not, that's all there is to creating templates. So now I'm going to share with you a few of the ways that I'm building templates and using them to make my workflow much easier. One of the types of notes that I use Obsidian for a lot is book notes. I have a book notes template that I use every time I start a new book. I'll show you how that's put together. I'm going to right click here and hit new note, and we're going to call this book notes. And then I'm going to do the 3 dashes so I can get some properties. The first property that I include is tags, and then I use a nested tag to identify what kind of note this is. So source/book/to-read. The next property I include is the author, and we just leave that empty because this is a template, so I'll fill in the author when I create a new book. And then I also like to keep track of when the book was published, so I just get an idea of context as far as time of when the book was written. Some other possible properties that you could use for this is maybe you could have a date started, so if you want to keep track of when you started reading the book. And then along with that, you can make a date finished. And then we're going to make these date by clicking on the little lines and getting a date in here. And that's what I have for my book notes. So as you can see, I use it for things that have properties that I want to be able to fill out about that book. So let's create a new note. And the book that I just finished reading is called Slow Productivity. So I'm going to go ahead and use my hotkey, and I'm going to hit book notes. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. So it is Cal Newport was the author, and this was published this year, 2024. I don't remember when I started it, but we'll say I started it on the 1st and I finished it today. And then I can write notes about the book. This book was awesome. So if you find you're using the same properties over and over again, create a template with those properties, and then you can just insert them whenever you need them. Another template I use is for my YouTube videos. So let's recreate that template here as well. I right click on templates, new note. We're going to say YouTube video. And I've got some properties that I use here. So we're going to do a dash dash dash. And I use tags and I say YouTube/idea. The other property I have is publish date. And I'll make that a date property as well. My publish date is for when I'm hoping to publish it. I'll enter that in. And then once it's actually published, I'll go back in and change that date if it didn't get published on my expected date. The other thing that I have in my YouTube template is a call out with some tips, things that I want to remember as I write my YouTube scripts. I put these tips inside of what's called a call out, and I collapse that call out so I don't have to see it all the time. But if I open up this call out, click here, you'll see I have some tips and things that I want to remember as I'm creating my YouTube videos. So let's take a look at how to create this call out. I'm going to click on this little code button here, and this shows the source code for this call out. You start off by doing a right facing arrow, and then you do a bracket, an exclamation mark, and then the type of call out. You close the bracket, and then this minus symbol is what makes it so that it will be collapsed by default. And then I add a title for the call out. That's the part that shows when it's collapsed. And then I just created a bullet list inside of the call out. Now this little caret has to be in front of anything that you want to include in the call out all the way down to the bottom. And then when you click out of it, you can then see the call out. So in order to use this template, create a new note, Obsidian templates. I hit my hotkey, I go down to YouTube video, hit enter, and now I have it tagged with YouTube/idea. That way I know it's in the first stage. Then I want to publish this by Friday, so I'm going to click on Friday. And then I can write my notes. Obsidian templates are awesome. So let's say you like the look of these callouts, but you can't remember the syntax for how to create them. Well, if you find you're using callouts often and you don't remember them, create a template for it. So let's go ahead and right click, note, and we're going to say tip call out. And then I'm going to do that right facing caret and bracket, exclamation, tip. And if I leave this blank, if I don't give it a title, it will give this tip part as the title. So hit enter a couple times, now it just says tip. So now when I want to create a tip inside of, let's go over to this book notes again. Well, actually, that's our template. Let's go over to our slow productivity, and I want to insert a call out. I hit the hotkey, tip call out. Now it's right there. I can go up, and I can say maybe there's a quote or something that I want to include here. Now it's called quote. I hit enter, and I say, here's my quote. And now we have that tip call out. Now there's a bunch of different kinds of call outs that you can create. If you want to see what those are, I'm going to include them in the Markdown cheat sheet inside this Obsidian for Beginners vault. I'll also go ahead and include the templates for each of these call outs in the Obsidian for Beginners vault so that you can just insert them whenever you need them. These are the main ways that I'm using templates, and as you can see, they're very powerful and they make things a lot easier, especially when you are reusing the same types of things over and over again. Congratulations for making it to the end. I know that was a lot of stuff to cover, but I hope that it has given you a solid foundation for you to be able to go and build amazing productivity tools inside of Obsidian. And if that wasn't enough Obsidian for you, I've got a playlist of other Obsidian videos you can check out right here.